Remembering Ripon, Wisconsin. I had a long career in the major appliance industry. My first job was with a wholesale distributor representing several appliance brands and calling on local retailers throughout Arizona. And one of the brands we carried was Speed Queen washers and dryers. Speed Queen is based in the small town of Ripon, Wisconsin. The first time I went to Ripon was for several days of training. I flew into Chicago O'Hare, where I hooked up with a co-worker from our El Paso branch for the flight to Oshkosh. Oshkosh, Wisconsin was the nearest airport to Ripon. My co-worker went by the name of Skookie. Skookie and I were to become great friends for the next 15 years. Well, a couple of guys from Speed Queen met us in Oshkosh to take us to Ripon, a 30-minute drive. By then, it was past dinner, or as they say in Wisconsin, supper. Unfortunately, the town's only coffee shop, The Spot, closed in the afternoon. There was no restaurant in Ripon. Not to worry, one of our hosts made a phone call, and The Spot reopened for the two of us and our host to have dinner. After dinner, I was ready to get some rest, but Skookie insisted that we check out the town. That meant he wanted to go to the local tavern. Now, the taverns that we're used to here serve beer in glasses that are about 12 ounces, but evidently in the Midwest, they use these small water glasses, maybe 6 ounces if you filled it to the top. But the price was accordingly much less. Well, there was one other person at the bar, and there was a couple sitting in a booth. Skookie looked around for a minute, then he looked at me, and he said, "Art, I'm going to do something I've wanted to do my whole life, but I've been too much of a cheapskate to do it. Bartender, I'm buying a round for the house." Later, I asked the bartender, "What is Ripon famous for anyway?" And he answered, "This is where the Republican Party was found." I replied, "And you think that's something to be remembered for?" But it's true. This is the little white schoolhouse where some politicians gathered to form the Republican Party in 1854. Turns out a few years later, we elected an unheard of Republican politician, a lawyer from Illinois, to be President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. Now, Ripon is also the home of Ripon College, a highly regarded and small private school. The next morning, we hooked up with the rest of the training group. There were maybe 8 of us altogether. Speed Queen didn't really have any kind of training facility, so they would bring in groups of 6 to 8 people over several weeks until they had gone through the entire country training all the distributors in the nation. Of course, there was the highlight, a tour of the factory. One day we had the honor of having lunch with the president of Speed Queen. The spot was a bit casual. However, in the town square next to the little white schoolhouse where the Republican Party was founded, there was a building that looked like a county courthouse or something. It was called the Republican House. It served as a restaurant. Oddly, the Republican House had no hours. You had to make reservations, and they would open. I'm not making this up. They basically just opened for special occasions. Nearby, Green Lake is a big summer vacation spot for folks from the Chicago area. And there are some terrific restaurants on Green Lake. They call themselves supper clubs. And they loved to host a group from Speed Queen because we were usually there off-season when they had no vacationers. Norton's was one of my favorites. I remember being there with a group, including my friend and boss, Ray Snyder. It was Friday, and there was a little note attached to the menus, fish fry special. I looked out the window at that lake, and I'm thinking that these fish were probably swimming in that water in the morning. I looked at my boss, and he said, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Of course, Speed Queen was buying, so most of their guests were ordering the most expensive things on the menu, steaks, prime rib. But when they brought those 2 platters covered with fresh-caught battered fish, we were the envy of everyone at the table. Like many other appliance brands, Speed Queen was owned by a larger entity, Raytheon. Years later, Raytheon sold off their appliance brands, and Speed Queen was sold to Alliance Laundry Systems, which is a conglomerate consisting of commercial laundry companies. It turned out to be a great fit, and Alliance actually relocated their corporate headquarters to Ripon, Wisconsin. This was a rare situation that an acquisition like this turned to work out in favor of the acquired company, and it meant more jobs for the community. Now, I've made some fun of Ripon and its people, but I have to say, I have never met nicer people in my life than the small-town Midwesterners like those that I experienced in Ripon, Wisconsin.